Sam had been gone only about 10 minutes, and now he was back again. He must have forgotten something. That drink was responsible. Maybe his hat, or maybe even the key to his own quarters uptown. He knew I couldn't come down and let him in, and he was trying to be quiet about it, thinking perhaps I dozed off. All I could hear was his faint jiggling down at the lock of the front door. It was one of those old-fashioned stoop houses, with an outer pair of storm doors that were allowed to swing free all night, and then a small vestibule, and then the inner door, worked by a simple iron key. The liquor had made his hand a little unreliable, although he's had this difficulty once or twice before, even without it. A match would have helped him find the keyhole quicker, but then, Sam doesn't smoke. I knew he wasn't likely to have one on him. The sound had stopped now. He must have given up, gone away again, decided to let whatever it was go until tomorrow. He hadn't gotten in, because I knew his noisy way of letting doors go shut by themselves too well, and there hadn't been any sound of that sort, that loose slap he always made. Then suddenly, it exploded. Why at this particular moment, I don't know. There was some mystery of the inner workings of my own mind. It flashed like waiting gunpowder, which a spark had finally reached along a slow train. Drove all thoughts of Sam and the front door and this and that completely out of my head. It had been waiting there since mid-afternoon today, and only now. More of that delayed action. Damn that delayed action. The renting agent and Thorwald had both started even from the living room window. An intervening gap of blind wall, and both had reappeared at the kitchen window, still one above the other. But some sort of hitch or flow or jump had taken place, right there that bothered me. The eye is a reliable surveyor. There wasn't anything the matter with their timing. It was their parallelness, or whatever the word is. The hitch had been vertical, not horizontal. There had been an upward jump. Now I had it. Now I knew, and I couldn't wait. It was too good. They wanted a body, now I had one for them. Sore or not, Boyne would have to listen to me now. I didn't waste any time. I dialed his precinct house then and there in the dark, working the slots in my lap by memory alone. They didn't make much noise going around, just a light click, not even as distinct as that cricket out there. He went home long ago, the desk sergeant said. This couldn't wait. All right, give me his home phone number. He took a minute, came back again. Trafalgar, he said. Then nothing more. Well, Trafalgar what? Not a sound. Hello? Hello? I tapped it. Operator, I've been cut off. Give me that party again. I hadn't been cut off. My wire had been cut. That had been too sudden. Right in the middle of, and to be cut like that, it would have to be done somewhere right here inside the house with me. Outside it went underground. Delayed action. This time, final, fatal, altogether too late. A voiceless ring of the phone. A direction finder of a look from over there. Sam seemingly trying to get back in a while ago. Surely, death was somewhere inside this house here with me, and I couldn't move. I couldn't get up out of this chair. Even if I had gotten through to Boyne just now, that would have been too late. There wasn't time enough now for one of those camera finishes in this. I could have shouted out the window, to that gallery of sleeping rear window neighbors around me, I supposed. It would have brought them to the windows. It couldn't have brought them over here in time. By the time they had even figured which particular house it was coming from, it would stop again, be over with. I didn't open my mouth. Not because I was brave, but because it was so obviously useless. He'd be up in a minute. He must be on the stairs now, although I couldn't hear him. Not even a creak. A creak would have been a relief, would have placed him. This was like being shut up in the dark with the silence of a gliding, coiling cobra somewhere around me. There wasn't a weapon in the place with me. There were books there on the wall in the dark, within reach, me who never read. The former owner's books. There was a bust of Rousseau or Montesquieu. I'd never been able to decide which, one of those gents with flowing manes topping them. It was a monstrosity, Bisque clay, but it too dated from before my occupancy. I arched my middle upward from the chair seat and clawed desperately up at it. Twice my fingertips slipped off it. Then at the third raking, I got it to teeter, and the fourth brought it down into my lap, pushed me down into the chair. There was a steamer rug under me, I didn't need it around me in this weather. I've been using it to soften the seat of the chair. I tugged it out from under and mounted it around me like an Indian braised blanket. Then I squirmed far down the chair. Let my head and one shoulder dangle out over the arm on the side next to the wall. I hoisted the bust to my other upward shoulder, balanced it there precariously for a second head, blanket tucked around its ears. From the back, in the dark, it would look, I hoped. I proceeded to breathe adenoidally, like someone in heavy upright sleep. It wasn't hard. My own breath was coming nearly that labored way anyway, from tension. He was good with knobs and hinges and things. I never heard the door open, and this one, unlike the one downstairs, was right behind me. A little eddy of air puffed through the dark at me. I could feel it because my scalp, the real one, was all wet at the roots of the hair right then. If it was going to be a knife or head blow, the dodge might give me a second chance. That was the most I could hope for, I knew. My arms and shoulders are hefty. I'd bring him down on me in a bear hug after the first slash or drive, and break his neck or collarbone against me. If it was going to be a gun, he'd get me anyway in the end. A difference of a few seconds. He had a gun I knew that he was going to use on me in the open, over at Lakeside Park. I was hoping that here, indoors, in order to make his own escape more practicable, time was up. The flash of the shot lit up the room for a second. It was so dark, or at least the corners of it, like flickering weak lightning. The bust bounced on my shoulders and disintegrated into chunks. I thought he was jumping up and down on the floor for a minute with frustrated rage. Then when I saw him dart by me and lean over the windowsill to look for a way out, the sound transferred itself rearward and downwards, became a pummeling with hoof and hip at the street door. The camera finish after all. But he could still have killed me 5 times. I flung my body down into the narrow crevice between chair arm and wall, but my legs were still up, and so was my head and that one shoulder. He whirled, fired at me so close that it was like looking at a sunrise in the face. I didn't feel it, so it hadn't hit. You, I heard him grunt to himself. I think it was the last thing he said. The rest of his life was all action, not verbal. He flung over the sill on one arm and dropped into the yard. 2-story drop. He made it because he missed the cement, landed on the sod strip in the middle. I jacked myself up over the chair arm and flung myself bodily forward at the window, nearly hitting it chin first. He went all right. When life depends on it, you go. He took the first fence, rolled over that bellywards. He went over the second like a cat, hands and feet pointed together in a spring. Then he was back in the rear yard of his own building. He got up on something, just about like Sam had. The rest was all footwork, with quick little corkscrew twists at each landing stage. Sam had lashed his windows down when he was over there, but he'd reopened one of them for ventilation on his return. His whole life depended now on that casual, unthinking little act. Second, third. He was up at his own windows. He'd made it. Something went wrong. He veered out away from them in another pretzel twist, flashed up towards the 5th, the one above. Something sparked in the darkness of one of his own windows where he'd been just now, and a shot thudded heavily out around the quadrangle enclosure like a big bass drum. He passed the 5th, the 6th, got up on the roof. He'd made it a second time. Gee, he loved life. The guys in his own windows couldn't get him. He was over them in a straight line, and there was too much fire escape interlacing in the way. I was too busy watching him to watch what was going on around me. Suddenly, Boyne was next to me, sighting. I heard him mutter, "I almost hate to do this. He's got to fall so far." He was balanced on the roof parapet up there, with a star right over his head. An unlucky star. He stayed a minute too long, trying to kill before he was killed. Or maybe he was killed and knew it. A shot cracked, high up against the sky. The window pane flew apart all over the two of us, and one of the books snapped right behind me. Boyne didn't say anything more about hating to do it. My face was pressing outward against his arm. The recoil of his elbow jarred my teeth. I blew a clearing through the smoke to watch him go. It was pretty horrible. He took a minute to show anything, standing up there on the parapet. Then he let his gun go as if to say, I won't need this anymore. Then he went after it. He missed the fire escape entirely. Came all the way down on the outside. He landed so far out, he hit one of the projecting planks down there out of sight. It bounced his body up like a springboard. Then it landed again, for good. And that was all. I said to Boyne, I got it. I got it finally. The 5th floor flat. The one over his, that they're still working on. The cement kitchen floor, raised above the level of the other rooms. They wanted to comply with the fire laws, and also attain a dropped living room effect as cheaply as possible. Dig it up. He went right over then and there, down through the basement and over the fences. The electricity wasn't turned on yet in that one. They had to use their torches. It didn't take them long at that, once they got started. In about half an hour, he came to the window and wig-wagged over for my benefit. It meant yes. He didn't come over until nearly 8 in the morning, after they tidied up and taken them away. Both away. The hut dead and the coat dead. He said, Jeff, I take it all back. That damn fool that I sent up there about the trunk, well, it wasn't his fault in a way. I'm to blame. He didn't have orders to check on the woman's description, only on the contents of the trunk. He came back in and touched on it in a general way. I go home and I'm in bed already, and suddenly pop into my brain. One of the tenants I questioned 2 whole days ago had given us a few details, and they didn't tally with his on several important points. Talk about being slow to catch on. I've had that all the way through this damn thing, I admitted ruefully. I call it delayed action. It nearly killed me. I'm a police officer and you're not. That how you happened to shine at the right time? Sure. We came over to pick him up for questioning. I left them planted there when we saw he wasn't in, and came on over here by myself to square up the view while we were waiting. How did you happen to hit in that cement floor? I told him about the freak synchronization. The renting agent showed up taller at the kitchen window in proportion to Thorwald than he had been a moment before, when both were at the living room windows together. It was no secret that they were putting in cement floors, topped by a cork composition, and raising them considerably. But it took on a new meaning. Since the top floor has been finished up for some time, it had to be the 5th. Here's the way I have it lined up, just in theory. She's been in ill health for years, and he's been out of work, and he's got sick of that and her both. Met this other, she'll be here later today. They're bringing her down under arrest. He probably insured her for all he could get, and then started to poison her slowly, trying not to leave any trace. I imagine, and remember, this is pure conjecture, she caught him at it that night. The light was on all night. Caught on in some way, or caught him in the act. He lost his head, and did the very thing he had wanted all along to avoid doing. Killed her by violence, strangulation, or a blow. The rest had to be hastily improvised. He got a better break than he deserved at that. He thought of the apartment upstairs, went up and looked around. They'd just finished laying the floor. The cement hadn't hardened yet, and the materials were still around. He gouged a trough out of it just wide enough to take her body, put her in, mixed fresh cement, and re-cemented over her, possibly raising the general level of the flooring an inch or two, so that she'd be safely covered. A permanent, odorless coffin. Next day the workmen came back, laid down the cork surfacing on top of it without noticing anything. I suppose he'd used one of their own trowels to smooth it. Then he sent his accessory upstate fast, near where his wife had been several summers before, but to a different farmhouse where she wouldn't be recognized, along with the trunk keys. Sent the trunk up after her, and dropped himself an already used postcard into his mailbox with the year date blurred. In a week or two, she would have probably committed suicide up there as Mrs. Anna Thorwald, despondency due to ill health, written him a farewell note, and left her clothes beside some body of deep water. It was risky, but they might have succeeded in collecting the insurance at that. By 9, Boyne and the rest had gone. I was sitting there in the chair, too keyed up to sleep. Sam came in and said, "Here's Doc Preston." He showed up rubbing his hands in that way he has. "Guess we can take that cast off your leg now. You must be tired of sitting there all day doing nothing."